Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
It's one of those things that you don't give it a lot of attention. You take it for granted sometimes. But when you walk into your house, drive down the street, walk into a store, go to your doctor's office, all of that was designed by an architect. It was all planned out. And he's one of those guys that does great work in many different areas, whether it be commercial or residential in the New York metro area. And he's back with us with the latest trends on architecture. John Riggio is on the program. John, welcome back. How you doing?
Hi, Steve. How are you? Thanks.
Doing very well. You know, even before we jump into some of the updated stuff in terms of architecture, I just learned seconds before we jumped in today that your dad was a contractor. I had no idea. Tell us about that journey with your dad and then how that kind of started your career.
Yes, my father was a contractor. He was his own general contractor company called Mike's Renovation. And he did this when he was young. He was like 20 years old. And he used to make renovations of brownstone apartment buildings in Manhattan and Brooklyn. And he was doing that. And later on, he also developed a few houses. I think he did at least 3 houses here in New Jersey.
Wow.
But what happened was when he was like 21 years old, he was drafted into the Army in World War II. And unfortunately, he was wounded. So when he got out of the Army, he was no longer able to really work as a contractor because he used to get involved with a lot of the hands-on construction work. He used to do a lot of the work, even though he had his 2 brothers working for him. And he used to have, what happened? The video just shut off again.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, there it is. It's back.
There he's back. Yeah, I don't know.
It was on the Zoom control, just shut off. Okay, so then so he wasn't really able to continue that career. But what happened was he was able to get into another career with the railroad. He worked as in the railroad in their department. They used to make the schedule, the train schedules, things like that, and it was a very good job for him. It was long hours. But when he was a contractor, he gained a lot of information. He really liked to work as a contractor. And when I was very young, he was telling me a lot of stories about the construction, about he was hiring architects and things like that. He developed some houses. He hired an architect and told me about it, how they had a lot of stops on architects. And so that's what he was saying about the thing. And I think he sort of got an idea from where we lived that a lot of people, when they go to the public school there, the architect work is one job that they had available. And I think they thought that maybe I would probably go into like architect work as one possibility. So he was telling me some things about things like architect work and so since he worked as a contractor, I think I was already able to get some knowledge about construction. I had some knowledge about construction, and I think he had a whole assortment of tools he still had. I remember one tool that was really the contractor tool was this Yankee screwdriver. And it's somewhat expensive. You were to buy it today. I bought one recently. It was like $110. It's a very expensive screwdriver. Most people probably just buy like $7 screwdrivers. So those things like that were interesting. I probably did gain a few knowledge of doing a few construction things. Like say you watch like This Old House on television on the PBS stations, and so I always had like do those like little things like that really weren't heavy wood framing, but I knew how to do a lot of those things, and a lot of that came through my father, and he had all those tools and things like that. And
I just want to you bring back a memory and a feeling for me hearing you, because my dad was electrical engineer, worked in a plant on Long Island where you and I both coincidentally grew up. And I had a love of electronics, and that's how I started my career because of what he did. In a way, kind of the same thing I started building things electronically, which turned into transmitters and radio, and then I got into radio and I still do it. But isn't it gratifying, John, when you look back to what, by the way, my dad's name was John, when you look back to those tools and those things that your dad had, and then they're still in your life, it's a nice feeling, isn't it?
Yeah. I think that was very good, and so I think thinking back about those lessons he was telling me about his construction work, and at the time, he was still trying to develop houses. He would do like one house every once in a while. And I think at the time, he was telling me also that since he was a contractor, he really had the inside line to really construct a house. He was able to make, I think at the time he can make a profit of maybe like $60,000, which isn't too bad. That's like in 1960s or something like that, and that's like the 1960s, late 1960s. I think that's a lot of money. That isn't too bad, because I know over the years when I work with contractors, a lot of I work with architects. I know a lot of times an architect they want to get into building their own house to like do a development, to build a house and then sell it like a contractor. So something like this happens a lot. And I remember stories from architects I work for, whenever they tried to do that, they ended up not really making any money. They would either break even or maybe even lose some money. I was working for one architect that ended up, he developed a house, and I think instead of selling it, I think he ended up having like his relative live in the house. I mean, that is, so that is a whole different situation really than a contract. Because I remember my father was discussing some things about, when you're a contractor, like any trade, you're in the trade, you have like a certain inside knowledge, experience of how to do things correctly. And he was explaining that to me, because I was just comparing that with people who are architects who try to do that, something like that, to build a house and then sell it. And they always tell me they never are able to really make money off it. They're always wondering how contractors have that ability. And that was one interesting thing that I was comparing over the years. So I was in the architect profession. I wasn't really always thinking about my father's years as a contractor, but I think now that I was thinking about it, I was comparing that, and so I was just reflecting on some knowledge that he had told me about things like that still as an architect. So then that is one interesting thing, and
How about we fast forward to now with the recession, financial challenges, and permit fees? What's going on with that?
um, permit fees haven't really changed. They haven't increased. They've been about the same, and uh, so as far as the functions of the building departments goes, things haven't really changed too much. I think with the COVIDs, people are getting back to normal. They're going back in office and things like that. So that's really where we are now as far as the building department filings are concerned.
Gotcha. What about building codes? Isn't there a change happening this year?
Yes, they have changed the code to 2021 in New Jersey. And this is the changes taking place this year. They have a little time delay to March for everything completely changed over. So the code is changing. They changed the code over into New York City, and so things are changing again. They're updating the codes, and I bought the new code books and everything. And so there are some slight changes. The energy code is slightly different also. They've updated the energy code, so there's slightly new requirements and things like that.
How often are those codes changed?
I think they changed. It comes out to like an average of like 5 years or something like that.
And it
I
doesn't.
think the only one problem I noticed about the code that is different. The original code, they used to make it where it was like a law book. It was like a book with numbers, And whenever they changed the codes, all they did was give you these inserts. They give you these inserts. You take the inserts, you put them into the book, into the ring binder. And the old page, you're just supposed to, they tell you to just put a line through it. And I sort of like that idea better because you just had one book that you kept updating. This is a new style book. I have to spend about maybe like nearly $500 on new sets of books and the books that explain the changes and things like that. And that's because what they were doing was they were taking some code numbers, and with each new edition, the same code, instead of keeping the number the same, it might change. There's a chance the number can change slightly, which is unfortunate for, I think, for architects. Architects always had to remember some code numbers, numbers of where they're located in the code books. And by changing the same code, the same code writing, and then changing the number is a little confusing. I just thought that was because it's putting a little more stress on architects to have to try to update the code numbers. And there's always things like the in the code books, they have illustrated charts and graphs, and they used to have a certain number on the chart and graph, but they're with the new start of the code, the International Code Council changes the books, and what they do is those numbers that they have might change slightly. So that is only one revision I have about the codes. The codes work very nice. I see they're very comprehensive codes, the ones they have here. But I think the old style ones of just submitting the revised pages individually. You can count them. Maybe they give you like 20 revised pages. You could read through them, and then you just put them into the binder yourself. And that was how they used to do it. It was based on a different system. I remember, particularly in New York, it was based on going through. It was a law book company that was issuing the code. It was run differently than today. Today they have an independent code company that is making these codes. It's an international code, and since it's international code, they could have the same code in any country, but it's a slightly different idea. It's So that is the only one problem, is that the codes, even though they might have the exact same paragraph of writing, the number might change. So that is one issue that I thought is a little stressful to the same code number with the numbers change is a little stressful, that they might change the code number every 5 years. That was the only one big problem I thought in the new code systems they have.
And you wouldn't even know unless you keep up on it because it has the same code number, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. Wow, that can be confusing. Well, I guess it's part of the job that you have to keep it on your radar and keep tabs on that. For somebody that wants to be an architect, let's say somebody's aspiring, maybe somebody's son or daughter is thinking about it, loves the, design and things like that. What's your advice for somebody that's just starting out?
Okay, well, if they didn't go to college yet, I think what they would need to do is the most important thing is really to have a very structured education. I think if you're going to go into architecture is really very specific. So if you want to go into architecture, you don't want to go into engineering. Like some people might have drafting and engineering, or engineering, construction technology. It isn't going to help as much. You really want to go for the construction technology with architect work, drafting with architect work. It's very specific. Because there's also a whole trade of people who are just doing things like drafting. They still have something like drafting where you can go from one type of drafting, maybe in engineering, to civil, to architectural, to maybe manufacturing. But that is not going to help you with architecture work. So if you want to go into architecture, you have to remember to go to where it really just says architecture or architectural and any kind of education. And then from there, you can then move up You can go for the a degree that is will go for like the whole 5-year design degree. Then they have different degrees. They even have a 2-year degree. They have a 4-year degree. You could do like a 4 and then a 2, which was the original way people were doing. They were graduating with a 4-year bachelor. Then they were getting this 2-year master, and then the new style is now the 5-year. If you want to really become a licensed architect, you go for a 5-year degree, and it gives you the first professional degree that you can then get your license.
So if you don't have the 5-year degree, and let's say you do 2 years or maybe 4, whatever it might be, what would that enable you to do? Could you be an architect? You need to be licensed to be an architect. That's what I'm hearing.
Years ago, they had the ability where you can just work for an architect for like 8 years, and then you can apply through NCARB and then take the license exam. But they have become more strict. They prefer you to really have the first professional degree before you would take the exam. So if you have like the 4-year degree, you can sign on to NCARB, but they might consider you too short of an education these days. They might not let you take the exam until you really would have equivalent of the first professional degree. So if you took 4, then you need another 2 years of college.
Interesting. Okay, so you could work in an architectural firm if you had, let's say, 2 years of schooling, but you're not a licensed architect. So you have to work under their umbrella then.
Yes, and then from there you need 3 years minimum experience. After you get your first professional degree, you need 3 years full-time experience on a W-2 to really get the requirements met, and then from there you could then take the exam to have a license.
So for those of us that aren't clear about it, and I don't know if I ever shared this with you, but way back in the day, I loved graphics, still do. I started drafting, not even kidding. And I would start making up plans of houses or just, rooms and things like that. I found it fun, exciting. I had all the tools back then, no computers, and I had all the drafting tools and a drafting table. The difference between somebody who looks at drafting and architecture, are there similarities? Like the things that you're doing are somewhat similar, but from what I hear from you, if you want to truly be an architect or study architecture, you have to go in that direction. But what I'm getting at is drafting and architecture as an architect, somewhat the same though, in some regards. Is it right or am I wrong?
I think the basic skills of drafting are the same. Like to start off, I remember in school we had mechanical drawing. It doesn't say the word architect.
Gotcha.
But they would teach different things, mechanical drawings, and they did have a lot of architectural in those particular classes, but it wasn't just for architect work. So if you want to go into work that is really architectural or architect work, you really want to just take the courses that would say architect or architectural, because when the drawings are more developed, the skills you need are really slightly different than doing, say, things like civil, mechanical, manufacturing drawings. It isn't the same drawing. So if you were to take construction technology, construction drawings that are for architectural construction, you're going to do much better, and you're going to have the correct experience to match it. I think so that is what, because I think a mechanical drawing might be for anyone who might go into engineering, manufacturing, civil, or architectural. It was more of a course the way you would just learn the very basics, and then you would then go specialize in the field that you want. So I think, but if you want to become an architect, you want to take the courses that are just for architecture, and you're going to do a lot better.
Gotcha. I know things have changed radically even in the last few years with the software that you use, the CAD software and all of that. What big changes have you seen in those software changes? Things that you can do that you can show a client? Enlighten us on that.
Yes, the computer technology has increased. It is getting slowly better. I've been using the 3D software a lot more now, and the clients are liking that. That is something new that is slowly increasing on the jobs, and I've been making those 3Ds. I have like on my webpage, I have the 3D walkthrough, and you could see the walkthrough of the whole house and things like that. So that is a new technology. It's slowly getting better. And each revision of the computer software, they make small improvements. So they're trying to improve the software, make it work faster, have more things that you can draw that works better. So it's slowly been improving. And then also one thing that as far as taking you want to become an architect. Now, I had a lot of background in also taking art classes.
I remember you
I
said
noticed, yes, I noticed one thing from going to college is if you don't have a background in art classes, unfortunately, there are some skills with taking art class, like drawing classes and things like that, that are somewhat important. I think maybe like someone would take an art class, they might not care about art at all, but that is another thing that I would recommend, that you would take some classes like that. Maybe they're not even credit classes. You could do it before you go to college.
sure.
It gets some added skills, because they always like to look at the students to see if they know how to draw a straight line. I mean, that's one thing. See how their line work is. And some of that has to do with learning over the years, taking art classes. So I would also recommend that too.
Totally hear you on that. And again, I didn't become an architect, but I drew cartoons. Almost became a cartoonist. So what you're saying, like, I think we had the same eye. You went in a different direction than I did, but I enjoyed art, and it was fun. I want to say congratulations to you, John. You expanded your office there in New Jersey.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Yes, I've expanded my office. I added a room, and now with the room, I have the whole third floor here. So it includes the hallway and everything, and the entrance door. So things are improving. I do have two W-2 employees that I have working, and
Excellent.
so things are improving. And I think the talk about the recession recently was really starting to get a little get things a little unstable. There's some pressure to lower your fees too. If there's a scare of a recession, everyone wants to watch their costs and everything like that. But I think from what I've been told, and I've even watching the news, that it seems like the recession scare isn't as serious, that it doesn't look like there is going to be a recession necessarily at this time. So that's good, because I think the whole thing with the recession was all people were going to get a little cautious and everything can stop. And that's one thing that happened in this construction industry.
And I got to believe too, with COVID, more people realize that, hey, I'm spending time in my home more. We really like it here. Let's renovate. And now you fast forward to now, with the interest rates having gone up. I believe they came down a little bit. People aren't selling as much because they don't have the inventory anymore. Some people are working on their houses, and I guess that's good for architects. John, great having you here with us. I know that sometimes we talk about your tennis career back in the day, so I'm sure we'll circle back to that at some point. But I remind everybody, if you're looking for any kind of architecture work, somebody who does a fantastic job, really does care, go to johnriggio.com. That's John, Riggio. I'm sorry, JohnRiggio.com, and reach out to John. Thanks for being with us today, John. Look forward next time we talk.
Okay, thanks a lot, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.